stoner videos. This ain't even about weed and animals, but you know, we already did a video kind of like that. ATM International, that's a player right there. Y'all know to go check out that big homie. What's going on with you? Appreciate you for spending some time with me today. But let's
Easy
get
ones out
into
of the
these
way and slowly
clips and
work our way up to the
videos.
worst offenders on the list. Number 10, cats. This one is a misconception rather than an animal actually abusing a substance. If you have a cat, then you more than likely tried giving them Nepentecataria, or better known as catnip. Now, this one is not really a drug like the others on the list and is actually an herb that is very closely related to mint. But it does contain a compound called nepetalactone, which can have a mild and temporary stimulant effect on some cats. And that's the thing with catnip. Some cats are affected by it and will go absolutely crazy for it, while others just remind you that you cannot buy their love and they still don't want anything to do with you. Now, catnip has many different effects on cats, but here are the most common ones. They will become very hyper after they ingest it, or they might just become very relaxed. Number 9, dolphins. This is another common one that most people have probably heard of. Everybody loves telling the story when they themselves are under the influence, so let's just get this one out of the way. Yes, it's true. Dolphins are the real masters of the ocean and are despicable losers who love to get high. They do this by first surrounding a pufferfish and proceeding to take turns lightly biting on it. Not only will they nudge and bite the pufferfish, the pot of dolphins will take it a step further by launching him out of the water and playing catch with him, making sure that that pufferfish is completely traumatized for the rest of its existence. And as you can imagine, this causes the puffer to go into a full panic, triggering its defense mechanism, releasing a toxic poison called tetrodotoxin, which is one of the most deadly poisons in the world. To put it into perspective, one pufferfish has enough poison to kill 30 adult humans, or about 15 average-sized Americans. Now, even though it's deadly, dolphins have learned exactly how much of the poison they can tolerate without dying. They've actually been filmed passing the puffer around for 20 to 30 minutes at a time before letting it swim off. The effects that the poison has on the dolphins is pretty interesting. They seem to go into a euphoric state where they become very calm and relaxed, even being mesmerized and completely fascinated by their own reflection on the surface of the water. Number 8, birds. Okay, now we're getting to the ones that most people have not heard of, but have probably seen firsthand. Have you ever come across a dead bird that crashed into a window or building? And you sit there wondering, how is it possible that it had unlimited airspace to fly around in, and yet still managed to crash? Well, the truth is that it was probably flying under the influence. This usually happens after the first frost, which causes fruits and berries to ferment, producing ethanol, a type of alcohol. And of course, birds know this. They will then proceed to eat as much of the fermented fruit or berries as they can to get completely hammered. And in certain parts of the world, bird alcoholism is on the rise. Just look at Yukon, Canada, where they have built a sanctuary for birds that have had too much of the booze, which is basically a drunk tank for birds. Here, they are placed in tiny cages until they sober up, but as soon as they do, they are released back into the wild, where they can continue boozing. So next time you see a bird that isn't flying straight, just remember, he's probably a degenerate good-for-nothing alcoholic. Number 7, honeybees.
They're not angry, they're drunk. Shout out to them birds.
Probably won't know this one, but once you hear about it, you'll realize that you've come across it at one point in your life. Now, this one is a little more violent and doesn't have the ending that you would find at a massage parlor. Have you ever come across a honeybee that's crawling on the floor and doesn't seem to want to fly? As a kid, I used to think that this was because the bee had recently stung someone and is now dying a horrible and painfully slow death. But now as an adult, I am way more informed. Now, when I come across a crawling bee, I now know that it's either completely blacked out drunk or dying a horrible and painfully slow death. You see, when the temperatures rise, the nectar in plants can become fermented, and you guessed it, it becomes alcohol. So when bees go to collect pollen from the plant and drink some of that sweet fermented nectar, they get completely drunk. And this is when you might find a bee that has lost all control of its sense of direction and motor skills. Now the sad part is, if by some miracle the bee manages to return back to its hive, it will have to go through the guard bees. Think of these guys as the bouncers of the hive, but a lot more violent, aggressive, and heartless. If a drunk bee shows up to the hive, one of two things will happen. He will either get a lifetime ban from the hive, or get his arms torn off, wings torn off, legs torn off, antennas torn off, and eyes torn out, and die a horrible and painfully slow death.
God damn.
But don't worry, it's all done for the sake of the colony, since fermented nectar in the hive can cause the entire colony to collapse. Number 6.